Hey guys, thanks for tuning us in for this 26th episode of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guests for this episode include the host of The Jeff Dwoskin Show, obviously Jeff Dwoskin. We'll also have author Jonathan Alter talking about his new book, His Very Best, Jimmy Carter, A Life. We'll also visit with actor, director, and producer Patrick Harney. Also producer Stacey Toy. And to wrap up the show, we will have the one and only Reverend Al Sharpton. If you would, please take the time to subscribe, drop a like, comment, rate the podcast, leave some feedback, and share with your friends. We love to visit with new folks, make new friends, and fellow podcasters alike as well. And he's got a show that was, custom made for him, the Jeff Dwoskin Show. Jeff on the line with us. And first off, Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time to share with our podcast family.
Hey, great to be here. Hello, everybody.
Now, Jeff, when did the idea for podcasting first come up for you?
The first time that came up was 2017. I bought all the equipment. I was ready to go. Pretty fancy on social media. I was going to do an entire social media-based podcast. I was going to call it Viral Intentions, help people go viral with their tweets. And it was a clever take on the movie Cruel Intentions. I thought it was very clever. Bought everything, had everything going. And then it just sat on my desk for years. And then when the COVID hit earlier this year, I'm working from home. All of a sudden I've got all this extra time on my hands. I decided, hey, now is the time to really focus on this podcast. And then March 2020, I realized, oh, wow, bad time to start a podcast called Viral Intentions.
Timing's everything, especially in comedy, right?
Timing is everything. So I talked to my brother, and he's like, just call it the Jeff Dwoskin Show. And then you can do whatever you want. So I focused a little bit on social media, talked to comedians, actors, comedy stuff, trends on social. So it's just kind of a variety show of sorts. And then, I do a little shtick up front, and then read some tweets and trends from my hashtag Roundup community that I do on Twitter. And yeah, that's it. So I've been having a good time. Today released episode 22. So there we go.
Now, what was the hardest thing for you to get comfortable with in the podcasting?
In the beginning, I was nervous about interviewing people, and so I originally was keeping them short, just real quick, because I figured, that's as much as I could probably be interesting. And then slowly they just started evolving. I just started getting more comfortable, kind of kibitzing and joking around and having a good time. I mean, it depends on the dynamic. Every person you talk to, it's a little different dynamic, but that was the biggest mental hurdle. But I think I got over that relatively quickly once I just started relaxing.
Now, and I know this as well, comedy and comedians, everybody expects them to be funny and to be on at all times, but sometimes that doesn't always come come together either, though, does it?
No, it depends what you're talking about. It's a lot of times like I'll be talking to someone and they'll ask me a question, and there's a business to comedy as well. So if you ask me about a heckler, I'm not going to give you a bit. I'm going to give you my real take and maybe a psychologial point of view on how to deal with it from a business point of view, not I'm going to make you laugh while we're doing it type thing. It's because I believe there's real answers to those questions, and just because I'm a comedian doesn't mean everything I'm going to say is funny. Even when I'm interviewing people, I'm not necessarily trying to be funny with them. To me, when I'm interviewing them, I'm trying to just kind of use my time to get them to talk and, to get them to make it about them,
Now, who was your first comedy inspiration that, or when was it that you knew that comedy was the line for you going forward?
I loved a lot of comedians growing up. Joan Rivers, Gary Shandling, Steve Martin, Rodney Dangerfield growing up. I saw a comedian, the amazing Jonathan, at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle, and it was still many years before I would do comedy, but it was something that when I saw it and everything he was doing on stage, I think it was the first time I ever thought about that being me. Not a magician, but the comedy part. But and from there, that sort of kind of sparked it. I think I don't remember a time frame or timing, how that played into my personal timeline, but I do remember that was the first person I ever saw that kind of gave me that drive.
And I love to ask comedians this too. I mean, we always talk about the funny stuff, the things that work. What's the one that sticks out for you as that didn't go as planned? Maybe, hopefully not necessarily the whole flop, but maybe something you really anticipated, and then you come through and it's just like, boom! It bombed. Oh
yeah, I've had plenty of bad experiences. I think everyone does. Anyone who tells you they haven't is lying. I mean, they may not. The more they do it, they probably have less and less and closer to zero. But there's always a time. A lot of it is just when you go on stage, maybe your head's not in it. There's certain things that you can tank. But I mean, there's a couple. I'm having flashbacks right now. But there's a few times where you're on stage and just something right away doesn't connect and you just can't get them back. And, as a comedian, when you're doing your time, you got to do your time. If you're supposed to be up there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, you don't leave just because they don't like you. You have to stay. And that can be the most painful experience ever. And, you learn to survive it and get through it, but it's something then you just dedicate yourself to making sure it doesn't happen again. So, and
as stand-up comedy, obviously, along with concerts of any type being closed off for now, some folks, artists, singers, musicians have been doing the Facebook Lives. I was actually talking with Carlos Mencia during the pandemic, and he was like, Facebook Lives are so hard because you don't hear the laughter. And is it the laughter that maybe sparks the excitement in you and keeps it going, makes it run smoother for you? Is that why the Facebook Lives are kind of a no-go?
The energy of being there and watching the reactions live and hearing the reactions live, it's like live theater. I imagine live theater is similar in the sense that you feed off the energy of the audience. So if the energy of the audience isn't there, or they're not reacting, it's hard to not react to that as well. And, so there is a certain energy that exists. And on Zoom or Facebook Live, when you don't have that, when you can't look at someone and see them laughing or smiling or, belly laughing, it's like you lose that and your brain just starts thinking, how like you're somewhere and you're like, oh my God, is my fly down? You know what I mean? Everyone's looking at me. Is my fly down? That weird feeling you get, and like that would be the whole Facebook Live. I imagine like just thinking of that every time you're talking, like, are they laughing? Did that work? That kind of thing. So that's the closest. If you ever had that type of feeling, or there's something on my face, or there's spinach in my teeth, where you get that paranoid feeling, that to me would be like 100% of what you're thinking and feeling the whole time you're doing one of those live events without any real-time feedback that you're used to.
Now, since you're not able to be up on stage and hear the laughter and it keeps you going. Now, if you're talking to folks just in regular time now, if you hear a laugh, does that spark you to like automatically throw a one-liner after it?
No. Yeah, well, sometimes it depends where I'm at. You know what I mean? My wife doesn't like when I do that in public. You try to be funny in public. But yeah, I do enjoy that if I can make someone, like if I'm at a restaurant, I can make the waitress or waiter laugh. I do enjoy that, and I will kind of smirk under, and have a good time with that. But, it embarrasses my family.
Everything I do does that to my family. So I'm completely with you on that one, Jeff. Now tell us a little bit about maybe a favorite special guest on the episodes you've had so far.
Oh yeah. I love them all. But I had done an event a long time ago, about 6 years or so ago, with Erin Cummings. She's an actress. She was in Spartacus, and she was in Troy 187. And Jackie the Joke Man, Marlene from Howard Stern, was there. And so we all did this show together to raise awareness and money for Mittens for Detroit, which is a Detroit charity. And so when I started doing the podcast, I started reaching out to people that I had worked with, just to try and, because as a comedian, really any comedian, you're like, when you start out and you work in clubs and you're opening, you'll work with some famous big names right away, because there's just always that opportunity to MC. They just want to throw somebody to the wolves. So it's like, it's a great opportunity to meet people. And I kind of stayed in touch with some of these people, not on a day-to-day basis or anything, but with Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And so I reached out to them and just kind of, I've done 2 interviews with Jackie the Joke Man. I haven't released the second one yet. And I interviewed Erin Cummings, and I actually released that one today. That's available now. And I was just kind of reliving those and hearing those stories. I mean, the combination of the two of them brought back some good memories of an event we did together where we made some change. And the stories are great. And, I really enjoy it. Like my whole idea with the podcast was I want to talk to people and hear them tell stories. I interviewed this guy who lived with Groucho Marx for 3 years, and he's telling stories about, Bob Hope just coming over for lunch and stuff like that. And it's like, to me, like, those are fascinating things. And I hope other people do as well. But it's like a whole combination of things, people that wrote big movies, people that acted in them, comedians that people know or can get to know. So that to me has been kind of the cool thing. But I think the combination of those series of interviews have been my favorite.
And tell us a little bit about, you're going to have to give me the full name of the hashtag. What was that?
Oh, hashtag Roundup. On Twitter, I created an app, and I'm a digital guy and a social media digital guy. And so I created this app called hashtag Roundup, and it corresponds to a Twitter property also called hashtag Roundup. And we do call and response hashtags. So what that means is, just like in comedy, you have a premise and then people can make jokes about a premise. Call and response hashtags are like hashtag something scary in 5 words, or hashtag kill a conversation, or hashtag fake Scooby-Doo facts. Just something where you read the hashtag and you go, oh, I could write something to that hashtag, right? And so they're games, and we do them every 90 minutes. And if you have the app, it buzzes your phone and lets you know, hey, a game is starting. And so people can go on Twitter, and it helps people tweet things. I found that a lot of people who are on Twitter, they kind of avoid Twitter because it's like, I don't know what to tweet. And this gives you something to tweet. And then because you're using hashtags, you're part of this hashtag community, because when people search on these things, they click on the hashtag. So if you and I don't follow each other, I still have a good chance of seeing your tweet, and then I can interact with you, follow you, and then, you can just get to know certain people that way and build up your follower counts and your retweets and your likes as such. So I've been doing that for about 5 years now.
And for me, doing the podcast, the hashtag, that was something I really had to sit down and really learn and delve into to explain to myself. But to the novice that's listening out there, what is the significance of the hashtag?
The hashtag itself is a marker. So it says I'm talking about this particular topic, and so it lets people click on that hashtag and find people who are discussing that particular topic. And in our example, it's fun games. In other examples, it might be an artist puts out a song. So you see the hashtag, the name of the song trending, or people are watching The Walking Dead and hashtag The Walking Dead are trending. And so you click on the hashtag The Walking Dead and you're like, oh, here's a whole conversation. People are talking about the show. So the hashtag itself is a marker that lets you find quickly, just by clicking on that hashtag, other people using the hashtag.
And what's the most ridiculous use of a hashtag that you've seen?
I don't believe there is a ridiculous use.
There's no ridiculousness to them, huh?
No, it's very serious, fun stuff.
There you go. Now, Jeffrey, I want to make sure and let all of our listeners know more about the podcast. When new episodes. I know the new one is up today. Is it each Monday? Is that how that runs?
Yeah, Mondays at noon. I release new episodes, and it's weekly. And the Jeff Dwoskin Show, and it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it.
All right. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you taking some time and sharing some time on the podcast here. Looking forward to checking out your latest episode, and hopefully we can reconnect real soon, my friend.
I would love that. Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Up next is going to be author and political correspondent Jonathan Alter talking about his latest work, His Very Best, Jimmy Carter, A Life. Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
My pleasure.
Now, Jonathan, I think especially right now, taking a look at a kind, genuine man, one of the a great person and president, Jimmy Carter. What, especially in the times we're living in, Jonathan, what do you think we could pick most from him to insert into our lives today?
That's a great question, Cameron. I would say honesty, confidence, seriousness of purpose. And an intelligence, a willingness to plan for bad times, which they did when Carter created FEMA. But just in the short term, this might sound rather jarring to you, but in 1978, Jimmy Carter developed a painful case of hemorrhoids. And his aides said, well, let's just put out a statement saying, the president is indisposed or something vague. And Carter said, no, you have to be honest about these things because you can really cause us problems abroad if people wonder why the president, not at work and what's really going on. And so even though it was very embarrassing, they put out a statement saying the president had hemorrhoids. So compare that to today.
That's very true, and the work that he's done, even aside from politics, in his day-to-day life, trying to make a difference in other people's lives, you can't quantify the lives that he's touched by his life as well.
That's right, those lives that he touched, and a lot of very far-sighted things he did as president. So I describe him as a political and maybe stylistic failure as president. My book is warts and all, but a substantive and far-sighted success. And I think an inspiring one in this time of trial that we're in right now. His example is inspirational, and certainly in writing this book over the last 5 years, it really gave me a break from Trump. I remember I would go back to the Carter papers and the papers reading about him, and then, of course, interviewing him many times as I did, and it sort of wiped away the toxins of Trump. So I almost think of him, reading my book as kind of like comfort food for the body politic, for people who want to know that we can have a president with such a decency and compassion.
And for you, what was the big aha moment in the preparation, the reading of books, and talking to individuals who know Carter best? What was there? There's probably more than one, but is there one aha moment that really sticks out to you?
I think there are a couple. One was when I realized just what an unbelievable virtuoso performance he pulled off at Camp David. Bringing peace to Israel and Egypt, and they haven't fired a shot in anger. It's the most enduring peace treaty of the post-war period. And I realized, this guy could pull that off. There must be something more to him than the the lazy shorthand, bad president, great ex-president, but the truth has to be more complicated than that. And then when I found out that if he had been reelected, he would have addressed climate change in the second half of his second term, that was when I was really hooked on trying to write what, turned out it's the first full-length biography of Jimmy Carter.
And what was it? How was he in the interviews? Was he really open and honest, just kind of like you would expect from him, or and how candid was he with you?
He's super candid, and it's gotten him in trouble. It attributed to his problems when he was president, and some of his problems as a former president. Because when they ask him what he thinks of other presidents, he answers honestly. So, yeah, I interviewed him 12 times, and built a Habitat for Humanity house with him in Memphis, and had 7 meals with him. He was unfailingly gracious and honest. Just to give you one example, in 1980, on the eve of the Democratic Convention, where he was nominated just barely over Ted Kennedy, and he went on to lose that year to Reagan, Dan Rather interviewed him, and he asked him to grade himself, and Carter foolishly agreed to give himself grades. Remember, we all know that Trump just gives himself A's and A pluses, right? Carter, in a few areas, he gave himself a B, a C plus, a B minus, And Rather was, when I interviewed Dan Rather about it, he was just stunned, that he would answer this question that way. And then when I asked Carter, well, what do you think of those grades that you gave Dan Rather 40 years ago? And he said, well, I think they're probably about right, Now, in other areas, he gave himself better grades, but, in foreign policy, he gave himself high marks, and he was right, because his foreign policy was historic in many ways. And, domestically, of course, he was battled with a bad economy that really wasn't his fault, and he appointed Paul Volcker, who ended up ending inflation, but he jacked up interest rates right before the election, which hurt Carter a lot. And then by the time his anti-inflation policy kicked in, Reagan was already president. Reagan benefited from it. And then, of course, there was the Iran hostage crisis, but that, after the election, that ended well also. We got all the hostages back safely, but it did him a lot of damage. But I have to say that in many ways, I was more interested, no, I should say more interested. I was equally interested in Cameron in his earlier life, and because he led this kind of epic American life, barefoot boy, no running water, no electricity, and then he's in the Navy. He's writing these really steamy love letters to his wife Rosalind, and like letters we've never seen before between President and First Lady, that are in my book. And then Jim Crow South, just how rough it was, kind of white terrorism in Southwest Georgia, where he's from. And so this was a kind of a roller coaster life, almost out of a novel that Jimmy Carter led, that had me really hooked from a pretty early point in my research.
And again, the book, His Very Best, Jimmy Carter, A Life by Jonathan Alter. Jonathan, I do want to make sure and let our listeners know not only where they can find more information about the book, but other things that you're working on as well.
Absolutely. And there's Oklahoma is in the book. Actually, David Boren is in the book. Relates to natural gas. So, there's a lot in it. It's a long book, but I'm told it reads pretty well.
And Jonathan, it's been great to visit with you this morning. Looking forward to spending some more time with the book myself, and hope you have a great week, my friend.
Thanks very much, Ken.
All right, guys, our next special guest is actor, producer. Well, he does, I think he wears a lot of different hats is what happens. We've got Patrick Harney on the line. And first off, Patrick, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, man, thanks for taking the time to have me on.
Now, Patrick, if folks don't recognize the name, tell our listeners just a little bit backstory, where they may have seen you, and also, I know there's some you have a little horror in your blood as well too, and this is October, so we got to talk about that as well.
Yeah. So, no, people probably haven't seen a whole lot of me yet because I'm relatively new, I guess, in the grand scheme of most film careers. I'm relatively new in the industry, but yeah, no, I've been acting since I was 13 years old, and I started doing musical theater growing up, and reached over to the film aisle, and got stuck in love with that, and so I've been doing that ever since. And I've actually got speaking of the horror thing, I actually just shot a short film called Project Horror with, and it's a really, really cool story. I can't say a whole lot about it, but the teaser trailer just went up on YouTube just the other day. So that is definitely something to check out. It kind of gives an idea of, obviously something terrible has happened, and my character as well as another character go in to try and figure out exactly what went down. So it's it's a really, really, really intense, cool twist to a horror film, and I'm excited for that to come out.
Now, when you talk about a horror film short, I mean, what's the biggest challenge in putting that out?
Well, one, I think it's all in the writing. So Rob E., he's our director and our creator. He wrote the script, and it's a really, really cool twist. I mean, it has horror elements to it, but it's got a lot of thriller aspects to it as well. But yeah, I mean, this is the first true horror film, I guess you could say, that I've been in, and it was a really cool experience, and it was cool to kind of see the story unfold in front of my eyes, and and I'm really blessed to be a part of it.
And I know that you're doing producing and directing and all that as well. And what's the behind the scenes? I mean, you see deadlines, you see, hey, we're going to be filming now, but what's the process to even get to the possibility of a scheduled date to film?
It's a very long process, and there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of people involved. I'm actually acting and producing on a film called Locker 42 that we're hoping to film in Q2 of next year. Right now we're in the process of trying to secure our financing and our budget. We've been trying to put some pieces in place that can help us do that, and can help us. I mean, the film's got to sell. So, but at the same time, I will say we've been very, very specific as to making sure what cards we put on the table when, and who we want to get involved. We don't just want to get anybody just to try and sell the film. That's not really what we're about. We're about trying to make sure that if we can get a recognizable face, and then awesome, but they have to fit the character, and they have to bring something to the character that we think would really, really work, rather than just having a familiar face just to have one. You know what I mean? So yeah, but there's a lot to it. There's a lot of meetings, which have all been virtual, which can sometimes be kind of a pain, but sometimes nice, depending on schedules. And also getting department heads established, and getting, making sure all of the legal stuff is in order. And then also with all the COVID stuff added on top of it, that's going to be another layer of paperwork and all that stuff that we'll have to keep track of. So, but I mean, we have a great team so far, and we have people in place that will be able to, handle all that type of stuff. I mean, I'm not doing everything. Jeff Cap, our director, he's not doing everything. We're all kind of, spreading the workload, if you will, and making sure that we can get the best product, out there as best we can. So.
Now, another thing along those lines, we've seen an uptick in movies in the state of Oklahoma just because there's some not necessarily kickback, but you understand it's advantageous to films to come to Oklahoma. Now, whenever you're choosing a location to film in, I mean, is cost of living or maybe tax breaks, is that stuff that's really thought of at that point in the filmmaking process?
Most definitely, yeah. So I live in Michigan, and that's actually where we've been looking to film at. And the biggest thing, though, is we're keeping our eyes open to looking into maybe Tennessee, because they have great tax incentives and tax breaks there for film. But there are obviously requirements. It has to be able to supply jobs to the locals there wherever you're filming. But the biggest thing for us is, say we want to film in Tennessee or say we want to film in Canada or whatever. We have to look at the cost of, okay, well, how much is it going to be to fly or drive everybody to the town that we're filming in or whatever? How much is it going to be to board everybody? How much is it going to be for food there? All of that stuff. So that all gets taken into account, because I mean, on a film, there's a lot of people involved. And so there's a lot of people that end up on set. So you have to be able to get everybody there and you have to be able to cover all that. You can't ask somebody to, hey, would you be willing to come act in this project and you get so-and-so, dollar amount per day, but you have to cover the cost of travel there and you have to cover the cost of hotel and food. Like, that's not cool. And we don't want to do that. So, we want to make sure that everybody's taken care of, and those are all just things that we have to weigh in. And if it's cheaper for us to film it in Michigan, then we'll film it in Michigan. If it's cheaper in Tennessee, then we'll film in Tennessee. It's all a numbers game. That's really what it is. It's all about the numbers.
There you go. So, are you a Wolverine or a Spartan?
Ooh, well. So I'm actually a Fighting Irish supporter. I grew up a Notre Dame fan. However, I went to Michigan State, so I'm biased to that. So if you made me choose between U of M and MSU, I'd choose MSU all day long. But if you throw Notre Dame in there, then I'm gonna pick Notre Dame. So
that's funny. When you said you were kind of stumbling there for a minute, I was like, he can't be saying Ohio State.
Oh gosh, no. I would rather get shot in the foot than support Ohio State. Yeah, no, man, I can't do that. Can't do it.
Now, Patrick, where you talked about doing musical theater and then falling in love with production, were there any entertainers that necessarily lit the fire in you, if you will?
Yeah. Hey, I was actually growing up, I was a huge Jerry Lewis fan. My dad introduced me to his work, him and Dean Martin's Colgate Comedy Hour, back when I was in middle school. And so, watching them perform, watching them be able to command a crowd and and be able to have the stage presence that they had was really inspiring to me. And then when I started watching more film, like really studying it, then I've been really big into Matthew McConaughey's work. I like his work. I like Denzel Washington's work a lot. Jack Nicholson, Leo, all of those guys, I like the layers that they bring to their characters. And you can tell that they're just professionals. You know what I mean? Like there's a different level to them, artistically than most actors that you see, I feel like. And, and hopefully I can get to that point someday.
That's what we've all got to strive for, is someday make it what we the goals that we have. Now, do you set specific on the acting side of things? Do you set specific goals for yourself each year?
I do, yeah. For me, it's I don't necessarily like sit down at the beginning of the year and say, all right, this year I'm going to accomplish this. But my biggest thing is I always want to get better as a student, for one, but also I want every project and every character that I take on to be either, more of a challenge, bigger, whatever than the previous one. I'm always wanting to take a step forward in my career rather than take a step back or a sidestep. My biggest thing is trying to get to a point. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say that I want to be, one of the most sought out actors in the industry at some point, because obviously I do. But it's not because of any fame or stardom or anything that I want. It's because that means I'll be able to get to work with the best that there is. And that's a huge goal of mine, is to be able to be at least, go toe to toe with some of the greats and hopefully, hold my own at least. So.
Now, in acting, when somebody hands you a script, what is the emotion that you fear the most?
That I fear the most?
In a script.
Well, I guess in regards to the character, I don't really fear anything, just because, being able to dive into somebody else's mind is a really interesting and intriguing thing for me. And it's a very exciting thing for me. Just something that I guess I get anxious, if I had to do something like that I've never done before, or if I have, a scene that's incredibly emotional, I get anxious for those scenes because those are, I know that'll take a big emotional toll, but I don't really get scared of anything. I guess not necessarily a fear, but more of an annoyance. It's like bad writing. I can't stand bad writing, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of it, but I have seen some of it. It's just, if something's written poorly, or a character, if the dialogue is just not natural and it seems very forced, then I'll just stop reading. I'll just put it down. Because if it's something that I don't, I don't know. I guess that's pretty much my biggest thing is bad writing is, or a very shallow character in terms of like not having much of a character arc or anything like that. That just, I just don't really get into that much.
Now, Patrick, if folks want to find out more information about the film, also all the other things that you're working social media wise, where can folks keep up with you?
Yes, you can find me on IMDb. I'm the first Patrick Harney that there is, and you'll see my ugly mug right there. And then also you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at pharns194, so at pharns194, and then on Facebook at official pharney. That's pretty much where you can keep up with my stuff. I mean, I usually use Facebook and Instagram mostly. I don't really use Twitter all that much, but even now I try to stay off of Facebook as much as I can, just because of how insane everybody is. So.
Yeah. Now, do you think that the stuff that is the projects that are going to be put out after COVID, how over the top do you think maybe some of the directors may want to go with finally being able to get back in there and churn some work out?
Well, I think obviously the whole landscape of the film industry will be different because of COVID. There's many safety protocols and things in place that, everybody has to follow. But I think, though, I have been on set since COVID, and I've been able to see some of those protocols and everything. And as long as everybody's cautious and as long as everybody is, considerate of each other, then everything usually works out fine. And I think it'll be one of those things where, you'll be watching the movie and you won't even realize, that it was filmed during a COVID thing, because there's been so much testing and temperatures taken, waivers signed, all that stuff beforehand. So, hopefully, what I'm worried about is the movie theater business dying out, because with all these movies that are pushing back and pushing back and pushing back, theaters are going to die out, and I would hate to see that, because they're already struggling really hard. And so if you're not giving them any content to show, then, there goes that business. So, yeah, that's tough.
That's right. Well, Patrick, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the program today. Hopefully we can catch up again real soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me.